So, thank you for joining Tony here with we are starting the webinar about customer growth, and I would like to
Right.
introduce Tony as our main speaker today to tell you everything about how you can drive customer growth. Please, Tony, introduce yourself.
So great. Thank you, Marion. So just, wherever you're joining from, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Just to, give a quick introduction. My name is Tanishto. It's Tony is a shorter version. It has been for the last 20 years. I look after product marketing at Adobe, and the product that I handle is Adobe Learning Manager. So you may have heard of it, you may not. It's basically Adobe's, it's a learning platform that helps organizations to learning across the spectrum, right? However, what we are talking about today is how does learning. So we are going to be looking at a very specific part of it, which is how does learning really drive customer growth, customer retention, and customer loyalty. So I think that's a quick introduction for all of you. And yeah, Marian, I think you can shoot your questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Tony, first question before you start your presentation. What does learning have to do with customer experience, and how do you two of them connect? So, please.
Yeah. So before I share any slides, let me just start with a quick story, Marian.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that I do quite often is I actually go to Google and read funny stories around customer success. Right.
Mhm.
What kind of problems do people face in customer service? So there's this interesting story that I hit upon the other day, and it's a story about about a couple. They are probably in their 60s. They have a laptop and they've just bought a printer, right?
Mhm.
Now, obviously, none of them are being able to figure out how to install that printer. So they call up the customer service, right? It's a phone number that they get on the printer package, and the customer service lady picks up and says, "What is your problem?" So the lady, which is the wife, she actually says that we have bought this printer and we want to get it installed. So the lady says that, okay, now open your printer. So they open the open the computer. So they open the computer. Then she says, now plug the pen drive into into the computer, and she does that. And then she says, okay, now you click start and then run, right? So the wife calls the husband who's in the other room that, okay, Carl, the lady is saying that you have to, click start and then run. And the husband asks, run where? Right? So now imagine, I mean, this is a interesting, but this is a real life story, right? Imagine when somebody has this kind of a trouble with a printer, imagine the tech being 20 times more complex, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about cloud services, we're talking about AI, we're talking about Gen AI now, right? And the world just keeps on getting faster and faster, right?
Mm.
So how do you actually justify your investment in a product if you are really not being able to understand it?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the importance of customer experience and customer learning, the linkage literally comes in. Is that when you have learning added to customer experience, that is when the customers are able to use your products better. And the more they use your products better, they actually adopt it faster, and the chances of them growing with your product actually grows, right? So with that, let me just share my screen and start taking you through the deck. Marianne, let me know when you can see it.
Yes, it's perfect, and I think we all recognize your story from customer experience. To be honest, so yeah.
Absolutely. Right, and we have all faced this. So there's another story that I have, that I live in India, and all my life, unlike the US, I have driven a manual car. right? So I'm
Yeah.
very used to clutches and pulling the gear every time I'm on the road, and then changing the gear multiple times. And then I go and shift to an automatic car. I
Yeah.
have never driven an automatic car before, right? Now I am basically looking for somebody, and everybody is telling me use one leg, don't use the other leg, and all that. But I don't really know what it means, right? So I have to catch hold of somebody and tell him that, I'm going to pay you X amount of money extra. But
Yeah.
why don't you teach me how to use this thing, right? And that's how, after an hour's ride with him, I am fully confident that, okay, now I can go and buy the car,
Yeah.
right? So if I had that learning from the company instead of a random individual, it would have been so much better,
Yeah.
right? So that's just two stories about how learning really helps. And we all know this, right? That learning has a very critical role in CX because, I mean, any product, right? So it can be B2B, it can be B2C. I just spoke about the printer, but in B2B, the products are more complex, right? So whether you're from manufacturing, whether you're from high tech, somebody going and deploying their code in the Amazon cloud, uh, how would they do it if they don't know certain kind of tech, and then they don't know what the EC2 instances are going to be? So all of this kind of contributes to it, right? So typically when we talk about learning, the general theory is that the thing that comes to mind is that of an HR person who is deploying learning for the employees. And for all the conferences that I go to, I think that's a common statement that I hear, that okay, if you're talking about learning, there is a L&D person. She's the right person to talk to, right?
Mhm.
Maybe not. Maybe the right person to talk to is actually a marketing head who's deploying learning, right? So I think that's where the CX story comes in, and the linkage really comes in.
Yeah, so indeed, there's, for L&D people, it's quite obvious to give training, but
Right.
I totally agree that for customer growth, this is one of the nice niches where many companies don't think of. So, what are the current challenges what lie with adding learning into a customer experience, Tony?
Okay. So first of all, I think with the stories that I just shared, particularly my story of trying to figure out an automatic car, uh, you know, I would rather say that the customers are learning,
Hmm.
but not always from where you want them to learn from, right? And
Yeah.
that's where the biggest challenges come in, because if I've bought a product, I will probably try and figure out how it works
Hmm.
until and unless I'm very lazy, right? More so in the B2B products, because the more when you're investing in a product, you'd better learn how to use it, right? So but what happens is that people learn from everywhere, right? So if I buy a, let's say, a particular service or a particular product from an organization, uh, we are going to be looking for solutions everywhere. Now, one of the places that I'm sure every tech guy goes to is the online help communities, right? So Quora being one, we seek for answers from Reddit, from Quora, from pretty much any help community that exists. We go through the printed manuals. We go through, we scout like YouTube videos where we're trying to find out some answers, uh, and we also look at if there are any virtual in class trainings available where we can get learn something. And obviously the first plus to go to is the website. Now what happens is that if an organization which is selling its products to its customers, if they don't control this particular sources of information, a lot of misinformation can go out. And that's the first problem, right? So we might have unverified information that is going out on social media sites, uh, and a learner or a customer can actually latch on to that and learn to use it the wrong way, right? So again, small example, the first time I bought an Alexa, uh, there was some internet change that happened in my house. Again, based on the manual, I was trying to figure out how to work it out. I went to a YouTube video. The process in the YouTube video was not entirely correct, right? So small problem. I had to go to another video to get it corrected, and ultimately I made Alexa work. But there are three or four self-professed influencers that I found. One of them is giving an incorrect video, the other one is giving a correct video. So how do you know which one is correct, which one is incorrect, right? Again, it's just Alexa connecting to internet, but
Mm.
the whole the problem could have been Alexa controlling my entire house, right? The lights, the fan, and then the problem would be much bigger if it started connecting, or some kind of locking system within the house. So that's, I mean, imagine the tech could, using the wrong tech could actually lock me out of the house. So that's what happens when you have unverified information, right? So it's important that the organization controls it. Second is that there are multiple sources of information, right? So there can be 20 different YouTube videos trying to teach the same thing, all from self-professed people, and
Mhm.
then you don't know which one is correct. So one is that you don't know if the process that they're saying is correct. Secondly, you don't know which of these sources is actually the correct one. And third, if I go about, I mean, I've just shown what a scattered experience looks like on the left hand side of the screen. And when I try and go into so many things, I don't know what is step one, I don't know what is step two, right? So without having a structured learning path or a path or a guide that I can follow, it really becomes very difficult to kind of understand how do I take things forward, right? So if I'm a customer, I've just bought my first whatever, maybe an EV, right? Electric vehicle, but I've never used electric vehicles in the past. Then I don't know what the maintenance looks like. I don't know how much time do I need to charge, and there are like because the engine looks very different. So I don't know, where am I going to get all this information? And as a first time user, I have to follow a structured path to understand my car. If I don't get that, there's a different manual and there's something else and there's some 10 different people talking about it, then I'm kind of lost. So I don't know whether I'm in class 7, class 6. Do I start as a beginner? Have I already entered up in the advanced course and then I'm not understanding anything? So that's another problem, right? So I think we've just listed out three problems, but if we dig into each of them, the challenges can be much bigger,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I totally agree. But Tony, how should learning be presented to customers to maximize this impact?
Okay. So that brings me, to the next part of the deck. One of the things that we have seen is that organizations. So some of them do it really well. Some are just starting off, but the intention of doing it right is pretty much there. But what we see is that different industries are at different levels of maturity. One of the reasons they are in different levels of maturity is because sometimes a lot of industries have uh, you know got their set ways of working, and they're really thinking, okay, how do I take it forward? So that's where it is. But what I would suggest is a good way is to actually look at building an academy, right? So what happens, I mean, think of it, when we were going for graduate colleges, we wanted to kind of master a particular subject, and therefore we would typically find out the right college to go into. We would apply, we would enroll, we will go there as a student, and we know for sure that okay, from our first year, sophomore year to let's say the time we graduate, we would be achieving a certain level of mastery, right? So customer education also, I think, should be following the same kind of pattern, only at a different level of maturity or at a different level of execution, more in a problem solving approach. But what really can organizations can do is actually build an academy, right? It's not, when I say an academy, typically the image that you can conjure of is a place with a huge campus and volleyball courts and all that. It's not that. It can be a online learning academy, absolutely, which kind of helps organizations, one, help customers enroll into programs, right? So we say this again, when I was talking about maturity, we see this in a high maturity in high tech companies, which are mostly dealing with software and others, where it is absolutely imperative that the customer gets certified in a program, right? Because if I have to use certain cloud services, I would better have engineers who are certified. Otherwise, they're just going to shoot up our cloud costs. Secondly, we see a lot of it in manufacturing and healthcare manufacturing as well, where if somebody is using an X-ray tool, they would better use it right. So therefore, it becomes very important to train up the technicians, right? And third, look at any big manufacturing company where a lot of classroom training is given. Right now, typically when a product is sold, you give a lot of classroom trainings, etc., to kind of teach people how to use that product. Add a certification to that to make sure that the people who are getting trained are actually the people who are using it. Right. So I would recommend, or maybe what we see a lot is actually organizations which are moving towards building customer academies. One, an academy is a platform that kind of imparts that knowledge. Second, it is a place where the customer remains enrolled. So you cannot track a customer whether they're going to a YouTube or a community site. But if they come to your academy, you can actually track where they are. So it's very important to know at what level is the customer currently operating in and how much of mastery do they need, right? And that's what you can do with a learning academy. Then, once a customer comes in, imagine giving them a survey to find out, where they are, and trying to figure out, okay, if they are at this level, then what kind of training path do they need to follow, right? So you've just sold a printer, the story that I told, right? That the customer doesn't know what exactly run is, after they start, so you'd better start from there so that they know how to kind of enroll into the printer and get it working, right? And more you engage with them, I think it's important that the more we engage with them, the more knowledge we impart. Not only just the product adoption happens more, but what really works is the fact that a customer who's picked up your product really really well, they actually become your advocates also. So they go out into the market, they talk about your product, and probably they show a lot of mastery. Because I think we all do that. Think of somebody who's doing wine tasting, right?
Yeah.
uh, I mean, you go to a party and there's this really intelligent lady or a gentleman who knows all about wines, right? And he's a wine customer that way. So when he talks about a particular wine which is like 18 years old and seems knowledgeable, he becomes like the heart of the party, right? So I think a customer who's doing picks up a particular product, it might be cloud, it might be a very broadening product also, but when you pick up that level of mastery, you kind of become the heart of the party, right? Which literally means somebody who becomes the heart of the party, they're like the wine advocates. So if you're selling your products and somebody actually picks up or goes to that level of mastery with that product, they actually become your advocates, right? So that's how the story literally flows.
Yeah, totally recognize this because normally I'm the wine expert at these kind of parties. So that's a nice coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, total understand this. So what kind of impact have you seen from customer learning, Tony?
So I think before that, let me just quickly, show a quick slide on how does a learning academy or where does a learning academy fit in, right? So, and why is it important? Because, even though everything that we have said is pretty obvious, when it comes to, engaging a customer, right? You would see that a lot of effort actually goes in this part of the business, which is demand creation, nurture, and growth, right?
Yeah.
I do that. I am from product marketing. So I think I'm a part of that, right? I'm guilty of that. Which means that we look at our budgets and okay, we say that okay, these are many amount of campaigns we need to run. We need to actually drive these many leads into our business. We need to nurture them with emailers. We need to do so many things, right? And we actually give a lot of learning in terms of the assets that are used for the discovery of the
Mhm.
business, right? So we would use these as assets. We spent a lot of time on that. I think pretty much every business does, right? So you have a very solid marketing team which is driving demand generation and nurture and growth. But we all know that it's almost 5 times difficult to get a new customer,
Yeah.
right? So a
Yeah.
lot of effort and money that goes in there. And it is nowadays very easy to lose an existing customer,
Yeah.
because if somebody is not getting value from your business, eventually they are going to lose interest. I mean, how many calls will you do to the customer support? Or how many times are you going to hit upon a brick wall saying that, okay, I'm trying to get this feature to work but it's not working, what do I do? And third, somebody has bought your product, and then they just use your product in version 1, right? But then you have come up with like 3 4 different updates to your product, because even in manufacturing, because of internet of things, there's a lot of software update that happens at the back end, right?
Mhm.
So the power of your machine, because of the computing power that is behind it, actually increases so much. But if somebody is not being able to use it, they're probably using your product still at a version 1 stage, right? So they're not unlocking full value from your product. And what we have seen is that once somebody buys your product, how do you engage them further, right? How many marketing emails are you going to send that? Because they're not going to buy the same product again.
No.
But what they can do is they can upgrade it. They can buy an ancillary product. They can figure out what other products are available within your ecosystem that they can invest in, right? So if you are once they have bought, and if you're driving like a lot of marketing messages to them, what do you see, right? So this is, I think, where the clear demarcation comes, that a lot of us actually spend a lot of money and effort in driving the demand, but we need to also look at what are we doing after they have bought our product, right? Because
Mhm.
they are the ones who are going to stick with us. And if we don't pay them the right attention, they're going to go to a parallel product, a competitor, because it's very easy to find one, right? There are so many reviews online. They'll ask their friends, and
Yeah.
they're being approached by our competitors anyway, right? So that's where we literally see customer education coming and adding value, right? That when somebody has bought the product, how do they use it, and when do they renew it? Because there comes, I think, the role of customer education the most, which also becomes intertwined with the role of the people who are handling it. So we typically have product marketing and marketing teams handling the demand generation, and then customer marketing and product marketing teams handling the customer and product engagement, along with renewal teams and customer success teams, right? So
Yeah.
this is where we see customer education literally fitting in. Now, coming back to your questions, does it really work? Good question. In fact, I would say a little bit of a, under, what do you call it? Maybe not so explored field,
Mhm.
to a certain extent, because you will see a lot of talk about why customer experience is becoming like the new branding, right? Because I mean, every business is kind of trying to differentiate themselves on customer experience nowadays. And the more they try to differentiate, sometimes it's also becoming like the same, right? Like, okay, we are all doing webinars, and then what, right? So those kind of questions are coming in a lot. So we have tried to see, okay, does it really work? So we did work with IDC on getting some results. These are actually quite recent, I think, last year's numbers. But we have seen that, that organizations that are actually using customer education to drive customer experience are often outperforming their peers, right? So everybody doing the same thing in terms of customer experience, like putting in a chatbot or having a customer success, is also getting stuck somewhere, right? Because you can have only so many people handling calls a day, and the
Mhm.
more customer calls come in, the more spends you have in terms of having more manpower in your customer service team or your support team, right? But maybe half of those problems can be solved by the customer themselves. And that's where we see customer education playing a role, because whoever has used it effectively being the most important word here, which is, having a structured learning path, having enough motivation for people to come in and train, and then, having a learning academy. It has really benefited by, let's say about increasing customer satisfaction to about 52% for these organizations. Anybody who has had higher customer satisfaction, it has an impact on revenue, right? So about 40% or 41% of these organizations have actually had higher revenue. uh, Higher revenue comes from increased referrals, because this is the second part of the business, right? The customer retention and the growth part that gets impacted by customer education the most. And therefore, the more increased referrals you have, the more increased revenue you have, right? People who are adopting it are actually staying with the organization more. So therefore, you have faster product adoption. And lastly, if people are learning about the things themselves, then you have less calls to the customer care. So that also shows in the numbers, which is saying about 37% reduction in call volume to the customer care centers, right? So some of those impact numbers that I just wanted to show, it comes from IDC research on business growth from 2022 data.
Quite impressive numbers, Tony, to be honest. So, can you tell me how can Adobe Learning Manager help to drive this process?
I think that's where maybe let me just introduce Learning Manager also. And for
Yeah.
those who are listening to this, it's not a product spiel, right? I'll try not to make it look like one. But yeah, I was telling you right in the beginning that the product that I handle is Adobe Learning Manager. It's a learning platform. So if you're coming from the L&D feed, if you have been in L&D ever, I think it's a very common term for you to hear of a
Yeah.
learning platform. If you're here from the customer experience space, you might be wondering what is learning doing here. We tried to establish that in the beginning, saying why is learning important. But let's say a learning platform is something that really helps everything that we've been talking about, right? Um, which is basically deliver a structured learning program to the audience. Uh, and how do you deliver a structured learning to the program to the audience is something that I think we will be covering in this slide. So what happens is that, suppose a customer buys a particular product. Maybe we'll go and talk about the printer that we were talking about in the beginning, right? First of all, a customer who buys a printer is not going to look at all the fine print that is written on the box, right? They're going to try and see, okay, what is that one place that I go to learn from, right? If I have to use this printer. Now, it might be a help platform, it might be, the website. And that's where a learning platform becomes important, a learning platform that's malleable enough to be integrated within an existing experience, right? So, as a customer, when you go to the web, you should not be directed to another different site to learn from the organization, right? So the printer company therefore can what can they do is within a product like Adobe Learning Manager, which is a learning platform. It is called a headless platform, which means that it can be integrated into an existing web experience. So you can put the learning itself inside the website, right? So your customer doesn't have to go anywhere. They can go to the website and they can learn, take a particular, they can enroll and they can take a particular course about how to install that printer, how to make it work, and actually how to make it for work for different use cases. Printing photos, printing documents, printing maybe A3, A4, A5 kind of stuff, whatever the printer does, right? So that's what Adobe Learning Manager really does. It's a learning manager. It's a learning platform, which is a cloud-based learning platform, which means it's available on the web anywhere. A cloud-based platform is equally available on mobile. So as a native application, or take it the way you want, right? It can be integrated with your website, and it is basically available to you on wherever you want it to integrate, right? So if your printing company has for example, a help site, it can be integrated there. Second, what becomes really important is that you have to look at the customer as a very curious individual, right? One is that they want their problem solved, so they want it to be solved in the right way. But secondly, we can also look at the fact that they might actually have a lot of curiosity around your product, and not just your product but ancillary products also, right? So if I am buying a photo printer, for example, I might actually be interested in photography as well, right? So this is something that we can predict. Now, suppose I give him 5 courses around how to use that photo printer, but I also club in another 5 courses that he may or may not take around what is the right way of doing landscape photography, right? Or speed photography. And I
Mm.
give them as a recommendation system. So what really happens is somebody comes to the learning platform to learn about, how to use this photo printer. And then he sees that there is like 5 different recommendations, just like Netflix, recommends movies to us. That okay, you since you liked, all these action movies, there are 10 more action movies that you can look at, right? I think same thing can happen in learning platform, which Adobe Learning Manager does, because it has got a very robust recommendation system behind it, is to actually recommend another 10 different courses to them, which might be about photography, right? So what happens is that somebody comes to learn about printers. They see, oh, they're not only talking about printers, they're also talking about what do I have to print, which is the photographs that I take, right? Now he might get into those courses. Now, every time he goes into those courses, what we can add on here is basically, things like gamification. Now, everybody who's it's a very popular term, right? So I don't have to talk much about it, but it's basically giving game-like elements to a non-game scenario, right? So taking courses is a non-game scenario, but for every game that he takes, if he starts earning some rewards and some points, it might actually get him back into your platform more, right? And when that happens, what you have got is a customer who came for 10 minutes to learn about how to install his printer, sticks around because you have got 10 courses on photography that he's interested in. And now, because of the points, he might actually come back and see more. So tomorrow, if you are selling, ink or anything related to that particular printer, it's actually a part of the courses that he takes, right? So the more he gets into it, the more he tries to figure out, okay, what other products are you selling? Are you also selling cameras? Are you also selling something else? And what do I need in my household, or what do I need in my business that you can, serve? And that's how the engagement increases. The more rewards you get, it pretty much works like loyalty points, right? You go to a shop, you get certain loyalty points, you again use it to redeem in the next one, and pretty much the world is now open, literally, for that organization to engage that particular customer. And that's what something like Adobe Learning Manager really does, because it's like full of these kind of features. And the second thing that it really does is that imagine that you are catering to an audience which is global, right? Because a very large company would probably want to engage people in multiple languages across multiple countries. And that's where really something like a learning manager comes in use, because it has got multiple languages within it. And secondly, pretty much every dashboard or any approach to a particular audience is personalized, right? So a German audience would get their personalized dashboard, just like a US audience would get its own personalized dashboard, right? So that's, I think, a quick view of learning manager. And let me just give a quick overview of how it works. So what learning manager has done in the past, or the way we have looked at that particular platform, is that we have broken it down into certain kinds of layers. So the top layer is obviously the experience layer, because that's what I was talking about, which is basically having a headless or a native platform. So an organization that wants to deploy learning can actually take the platform in its headless version, integrate it with the web experience. If they don't want to go through that trouble, they might want to say that, no, we don't want to integrate it anywhere. We want to keep it separate, sacrosanct, as a platform that anybody can come to. Then obviously you have the fact that it is also available in a native version. So it gets its custom domain, and anybody can come in and take their training there. The features are pretty much the same. Now we have something like a non-logged in experience, which literally means that you can come and check out all the courses. So the recommendations that you see can actually, they become more more honed up or more efficient when you log in. But even if you don't log in, you will still see a whole bunch of recommendations that are available to you, right? So it kind of creates that motivation for people to come. Secondly, I think what's very important, interesting about Learning Manager is there has got a seamless content playback experience. So we devised or we developed this player called the Fluidic Player, which is now a part of Learning Manager, which is basically almost like a player on its own, right? So it has its own web URL and you can embed it anywhere, right? So you can just take the player and put it on your website and say that, okay, these are the 5 courses. If you don't want to go to that platform, take the course from here only, right? So that is also possible. So it's an embedded fluidic player. The interesting thing that happens in this case is that, for any learning to work, it has to be distraction free, right? So when you go to a lot of learning platforms, you will see that the first is a video, but then you have to go to a different site to view a PDF, and then a Word doc is somewhere else. This is something that we have solved with the Fluidic Player because it kind of converts any kind of content into HTML and it plays it right from within the platform, right? So you don't have any distractions. You can just go into the platform, you can learn from it. There's just one player that is available on your phone, on your web, to kind of take your content. Second layer that we kind of defined is engagement, which is basically where we made it hybrid learning friendly, gamification, and with social learning, right? So it literally has a mini Facebook built into it. You can make friends, obviously. Since you make friends over learning, we expect this to be very high and interesting conversations. Secondly, you can have discussion boards that you can chat into, and then you can even create content. So you can record your video and you can make it as a part of user generated content. Gamification I just spoke about a little earlier. What's interesting is hybrid learning, right? So we know that learning on the web is fine, but we all miss our class teachers, and I think it's the same for corporate learning also. So when you are selling a particular product to a customer, for example, that car that I was speaking about, or some, let's say in healthcare manufacturing, we see a lot that somebody needs a certification. Not everything can be given as self-paced modules. That's where you need maybe an instructor to come and teach. Now, if the instructor teaches on their own, managing that data, who's getting taught, who's coming in attendance, etc., who's attending the classes, becomes a little difficult, manually, because there's so much of paper data that's created. So that's where I think Learning Manager has the maximum impact, because you can pretty much manage your instructors. If your instructor is missing, you can allocate a different instructor. You can identify who's enrolled. You can actually put up a queue, because suppose you have 30 seats and 50 people have enrolled. So you can say that, okay, 20 of you are in the waiting list if somebody drops off, right? And then manage the classroom and everything through Learning Manager. We did something like a very interesting integration with MS Teams, because again, the same thing, right? You don't want a learner to go everywhere. So we realized that about 350, 400 million people are actually training up or using MS Teams on a monthly basis,
Mhm.
right? So it doesn't make sense for them to move from MS Teams to something else. So we have done a very interesting integration with MS Teams so that the entire learning platform is now available from within MS Teams. So you don't have to go anywhere, right? You log on to your Microsoft Teams and your learning is there. So that's also something that we have come up with. Third layer obviously is personalization, because we were talking about why it is important to personalize everything. We don't want to see what others are doing. We want to know what we should be doing. So that's where personalized dashboard and AI based recommendations really come in. Now, from the perspective of customer growth, it's very important that we drive the right campaigns, right marketing campaigns. And that's what we have been able to do with learning managers, because we've integrated with Marketo Engage with literally no coding involved, right? So no API is required. It is a seamless low code integration that we have. So if you are using Marketo Engage or some other platform, let's say an Eloqua or something else, you can typically integrate it with learning. So what happens is that instead of driving the same message to the customer saying that we are giving a 10% off, or why don't you enroll into this kind of program, are you enjoying our product, and the customer eventually pushing you towards the junk, right? Because you're sending the same message again and again. You can instead drive a lot of learning which adds value to the customer by, again, the story of the printer, right? Somebody is buying a photo printer, and then you are saying, okay, these are the top 10 photography courses we have in our course list now. If you want to join, join, right? So when you do that and you put that in a marketing message and drive it through a marketing campaign, it might just get your customer back and engaged, right? And think of it, some of the people have actually added a price tag to each of these courses because we integrate with commerce as well. So what is happening is that somebody who's buying a photo printer suddenly sees there are these 15-20 dollar courses that are available with you, which has got nothing to do with photo printers but has a lot to do with photography, right? They might actually use you as an academy, and when they are taking those courses, you might actually ask them to upgrade their photo printer because now they're 1 year old. So do they want to have an advanced upgraded version as well, right? So that advertisement can be very contextualized with the learning and driven to the customer, right? So that's pretty much how things move, and I'll not waste too much time. But let's say from the perspective of the administrator, it becomes very important that think of it. I mean, there are some of the customers that we have who have 20-30,000 customers around the world. If they had to contextualize everything all alone, that guy would probably never go home only. Right? So it's important that we automate this entire process and we ensure. So some of the ways it works is that if you integrate it with a marketing platform or something like a Salesforce where the lead is flowing in, we can automate this entire process to make sure that the lead goes from Salesforce directly to your learning platform. The content gets assigned automatically because you have segmented it, right? You have identified that, okay, these people who are coming in as leads, they are all from this particular they have this particular interests and they're particularly interested in these products. So I would segment and create learning paths for them only, right? So all marketing heads coming into a particular product, let's say high end printers, we have been doing printers since the beginning. So let's say high end printers, industrial printers, and you say that, okay, all of these operations heads need X kind of training. They need to first understand the printers. Maybe they need to understand, how the competitors also work. So I can now put them into two kind of courses and I can automate the learning path, right? So the administrator literally doesn't have to do anything. The leads come automatically to Salesforce. It gets automatically, the courses get automatically assigned. The customers get their courses, they take them. If they don't take them, the administrator gets a pending request that, okay, if 10 of your customers are not engaging. So that's the point where you do maybe a kind of an intervention campaign, and you send out two more emails saying that, hey, are you still interested in this kind of courses? So what the advantage with learning manager is, this entire process can be automated, and starting from triggering emails to notifications to getting the data to kind of finishing the courses and the reporting, right? So there are more than 300 plus reports which are available at the back end of the platform, and anybody can see it, right? So you can assign the fact that, okay, I need to send out reports of customers who have completed their courses to my marketing team or my sales team so that they can reach out and say that, hey, if you are interested in these courses, then are you looking for an upgrade, right? And this entire process can be automated. So that kind of ensures that the marketing guy or the customer success guy who's running this particular customer education efforts is actually going to be having a peaceful night, right? He can go home on time, he can spend time with his family because there's a lot of automation in place. Third, when the customer data flows goes in and out and proprietary content comes in, the question of maintaining a certain amount of performance and security become very important, right? And I think that's where we also, because we have worked with a lot of government organizations in the process, where security is has to be at grade 1 level. I think that's where we work a lot in terms of having our certifications in place. So it's a FedRAMP certified platform. uh, and I think lastly, any platform, because when it comes to learning, a lot of organizations end up buying 2 or 3 platforms because they think, since we have 3 different audiences, internal employees and our customers, and we need to train up our sales and partners, we probably need 3 different platforms to do that, which actually is something that we can avoid, because learning manager has got these extended enterprise features, right? So with extended enterprise feature, what happens is that you can train your internal employees and customers without any overlap,
Yeah.
right? So it's just one platform, but everybody gets their own instance, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the ice cream vendor is the same, the flavors are in different, you just get different flavors of it, depends on what you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. So, Tony, I think that we can talk about ALM another hour, to be honest. So please give us the main differences. I see it on the screen already. And
Yes.
yeah.
So I think the biggest differentiator that you can look at is the fact that so what is at the center is the most important thing, is that you personalize everything, right? It's
Mhm.
almost like the Netflix of learning,
Yeah.
right? You come and you only get what you need, and the system learns from you, right? So the differentiator biggest, I think it's always a gradation of what kind of artificial intelligence engine you're using. So we use Adobe Sensei, which is also the learning, the AI engine behind, all the Adobe products that you see, right? Whether it's Photoshop or the Firefly that you keep on hearing about, right? So
Mm.
I think that's one of the biggest differentiators we have, because the AI just gets so much better, right?
Yeah.
With every interaction that you have, it just identifies. We actually give you peer learning behaviors, right? So it's not about what you are learning and what is recommended, but also what your friends are watching and what their friends are learning, and those recommendations also, right? With all of this, since one of the things that we are focusing a lot on is actually building low code setups, which literally means we don't want you to engage a lot of developers and spend a lot of time. So the more low code we are, the more token based integrations we have. It ensures that you don't need a qualified engineer to come and integrate two different platforms. Adobe Commerce and Adobe Learning Manager, for example, you can just integrate with generating 2 tokens, right?
Yeah.
Unified becomes very important for customer education cases, because your customers don't want to go everywhere. They don't want to go to multiple platforms, so you'd better use it. Social learning is emerging as a critical part, because the more customers interact in informal settings, that's what we do trade shows for, right? We want our customers to interact with each other so that they learn from each other. I think you can do that with social learning a lot. And exploring learning as a monetizable, or as a revenue source itself, can open up doors for organizations, right? Because as I just told you, somebody who's interested in a photo printer might also be interested in photography. So we can always sell courses to them. So that's an additional you know advantage that we have. We integrate with Adobe Experience Manager sites very well, uh, or for that matter any CMS, but this is where we have a low code integration. So a lot of these large to mid-large, mid-level organizations use experience manager sites to kind of train up or develop their entire content management across the enterprise, right? So with low code integrations, you literally can integrate learning within a very short time into your actual, enterprise wide web experience. and the learning can go everywhere your applications go, right? So it kind of remains integrated. So these are some of the things that actually make a difference in the life of, let's say, a marketing head who's using Learning Manager.
Yeah, super clear. I think this is it, right, Tony?
Yes,
Or
let
do
me
you have more
just
to share?
quickly give you a story of somebody who's using it. I don't want to give any names, but let's say
Mm-hmm.
there's a telecom firm that is actually using it right now to train about 1 million small businesses. Right, we all know how telecom firms, get businesses from large, mid-level to SMBs. Everybody becomes a very important customer for them. So one of the things that this particular telecom firm has been doing is that they have ensured that Learning Manager is actually being used, integrated with in a headless fashion with their main website, right? And
Mm-hmm.
they're driving a small business academy with it. So they have ensured that both as a CSR as well as as for future business, what is becoming important is that it has ensured that the knowledge that it has in terms of growing an enterprise actually goes out to all its customers and all the small businesses across the country, right? So they have targeted about 1 million small businesses, which are actually interacting with each other, learning from this particular platform. They're taking a lot of courses, and they're actually using it to kind of drive interaction between businesses, right? So suppose you have a small shop and you need to make it digital into somebody, so you would typically interact on this social platform, the learning part of the social platform, to kind of get help from somebody who's actually integrating commerce, right? Small businesses. And the interesting part is that people are coming to this particular website to learn, and from maybe a course on how do small businesses grow, they actually are interacting with the other small businesses. They're taking the course, they're interacting, they're becoming friends, they're helping each other, and eventually they're also generating revenue for the telecom giant, right? So I just wanted to show this case study, and I think that's a lot actually for an hour.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I mean, there are a lot many other use cases. So if one of
Yes,
the attendants would like to have a use case based on their branch or their industry, we are always open to share, of course. So Tony, I think this story was super helpful. I think it gave us some nice examples how to drive customer growth and let Adobe Learning Manager or any other learning management system help you with that. And
absolutely.
I mean, yeah, we're a big fan of Adobe Learning Manager as we are the partner in the Netherlands and Belgium, and of course we can tell everything about it and what you can do with it because it's more than just the highlights you gave us in a few minutes. So, yeah, I hope it was a useful webinar for the attendees. And if anyone has any question, please reach out to us. For now, I want to wrap up. And thank you very much for this interesting story.
Thanks so much, Marianne, and to everybody who's listening. Have a great day.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye bye.